We can get more analysis now and speak to Lieutenant General Russel L. Honoré, who's a retired three-star general and former commanding officer of the U.S. First Army. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us, General Honoré. Always a pleasure having you on the program. I'd like to just start by asking you whether you see a forced military takeover of Greenland by the United States as being a possible scenario at this stage.
I think there'll be great pushback from that. While it's possible, I don't think it's probable, because it would be totally disruptive to our relationships in NATO and would break down even our commercial and financial interests with what's going on in the EU and with NATO countries. While it may be a talking point in Washington, that will not sell well in the rest of the world. And we have troops all around the world. Who's to question the logic if you take Greenland now when you want Denmark next? There'll be a major global pushback from the Western world as we know it, some of our biggest trading partners. I don't see the possibility at this time of a military takeover. I think it will be a continued point of negotiation. You do this, and if you don't, such as with the trade movements, to try and force some type of an agreement. But I don't see support from American people, the Congress, or the international community that this will be acceptable, that a NATO partner will take another NATO partner's land. I don't see that happening that way. It could be negotiated for putting more troops there, which we could probably do right now with the current agreements with NATO partners, Denmark. But at this time, I don't see the possibility of airborne troops landing in Greenland.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned international pushback. What about domestic pushback? Do you think there would be those who are perhaps not in the inner sanctum, but who are in the Washington establishment who would have a thing or two to say about such a scenario?
Yeah, and they're saying that. We had a bipartisan delegation go to Denmark over the last few days, and they've reassured the Danes that they will come back to Washington and take actions if necessary to prevent any military takeover of Greenland. I see over the weekend the White House is talking about buying it and want to negotiate to buy Greenland, but we don't need to buy Greenland to increase our national defense there, because all we have to do is put more assets there to get the deterrence we need for anybody that might want to threaten Greenland or Denmark, which we've done historically since World War II.
From a military standpoint, why do you think Greenland is so important to the United States? Do you think it is?
I think there's mixed messages coming out of the White House. There's talk of national security, which most people in this business and have been in for a long time, national defense, don't see that as the driving factor. I think the driving factor might be business interests to go in after the minerals in Greenland.
Right, so you don't believe it is necessarily a military requirement and a necessity that the United States is there. I mean, you mentioned existing agreements that allow for a military presence there, which it has, and it can boost that, as you said. I mean, is there a sense in the United States or in the US military that perhaps the US is lacking some degree of access or capability in Greenland?
No, we got all the access we want. I mean, that's constantly shown. We had up to 10 military bases in Greenland, and I think the last count we have one, and it's a surveillance base. So if we wanted to put defensive weapons there, we could with current agreements through NATO partnership. So it's not a question of national security. I think sometime this administration have a way to say one thing like we did in Venezuela. It was about narco-terrorism. Come to find out, it was about the oil.
Okay, and when you hear European leaders say this is unacceptable, I mean, these are trusted key allies, you know, time-tested allies of the United States. But the Trump administration's attitude seems to be, what are you going to do about it? Is that how it looks to you? And what sort of a precedent does that set?
I think that's the way it's being read on the street. There was an interesting dialogue with the Deputy National Security, Deputy White House Chief of Staff. They said, well, Denmark can't do anything about it because we're bigger and we're stronger. We can just take it. And in that conversation, the person reminded the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, he's a little guy. So somebody under that logic, somebody could come take your stuff if they're stronger. And I think that's the way it's playing out on the streets in America, that this doesn't make sense. Just because you can do something don't mean you ought to do it. And it sets the precedent that the strong can overtake the weaker countries. And that's a complete violation after the agreements we made after World War II on people trying to take other countries over and take their assets and control other countries, that we would not allow that in the UN and in NATO, that we would push back on one country trying to take over another country, sovereignty of another country. And that's ridiculous. It's counterintuitive to everything we've read, studied, and invested in for the last 70 years.
There is this argument, though, and we've heard it from the White House, we've heard it from many close to President Trump, that there is a credible military threat to Greenland, that it comes from Russia and or China. What do you make of that argument?
I think that's a false flag. That's gaslighting. I think I've been reading that there hadn't been any Chinese or Russian assets in and around Greenland for years. So this is gaslighting the American people and the world that this is about national security. It's an aspiration to expand American provinces under this president as a legacy event. And maybe you want to call it Trump land one day. I don't know. But that's just speculation and humor. But it doesn't make sense to want to go back to an imperial form of government where we're taking over other countries because we want to make the boss happy.
I'm imagining that in your military career, you would have had the opportunity to serve alongside people from some of the countries concerned, some of the NATO allies of the United States. And I'm wondering what degree of contact you maintain with former colleagues, not just in the US military, but in other militaries of allied nations, and what sort of conversation you're having. What do your friends and your peers at your very senior level of the military make of all of this?
Well, many of them write it up as, well, he's using this as a point of negotiation. You either do it the easy way or the hard way. And I don't see us using the military to go in there and do an assault on Greenland or assault on Denmark to accomplish the White House goal to acquire Greenland. Some say it's a negotiation point. Others are straight up for what they're seeing. It's an aspiration to use power as the absolute military power, as the absolute ability to do anything you want anywhere in the world. And many kingdoms have tried that in the past and it has failed. And it not only stopped them from doing what they want to do, but it caused great harm to those kingdoms. And they are spread out throughout history from Caesar forward, Julius Caesar forward, that capturing and acquiring foreign lands for vanity projects don't work.
Right, and just lastly, I mean, do you see this whole dispute, this whole chapter, potentially undermining and doing NATO some quite serious damage, if not reputational damage, then damage to the sense of the reliability of the alliance and morale within it?
Absolutely. You know, much of the operation we've done in the Middle East, some good work in trying to deal with ISIS terrorists and other terrorist operations in the Middle East, is largely dependent on our NATO partners, because most of those assets are stationed in NATO countries. And we use their airspace to make our way to the Middle East. We use it to stop over and get gas and to rearm and re-equip our equipment. So we depend a lot on our NATO partners to be able to have forward-based assets in Europe that quickly respond in the Middle East to anything that might, whether it's a terrorist group trying to close a ship channel or respond to attacks that might impact our allies in the Middle East. We rely highly on those forward deployed troops we have in NATO countries. And I hate to consider what would happen if they start telling us we've got to move our troops out of Europe. That would be a major breakdown in the NATO alliance.
Just to wrap up this conversation, General Honoré, what would your word of advice or your message to President Trump be with regards to how to proceed on this issue of Greenland?
Continue your negotiation, but this has to be a peaceful negotiation. And if your purpose is national security, have the Pentagon staff come with you what else you want to put in Greenland and work with the Danes and the people in Greenland and start building the infrastructure that you want there. I mean, you don't have to own it to secure it, but somehow there's a word coming out of the White House, well, if you're going to secure it, you need to own it. You don't need to rent it space. You need to own the space, which might work for a New York realtor, but it doesn't work in the global world that we live in right now, that you can just go take other people's property and because you want it for your purpose. So it's totally a ridiculous argument, but hopefully this will play out and there'll be something else that grab their attention in Washington. And some might say this is a big distraction from releasing of the Epstein files, which there are people who are saying that on social media. So hopefully this play out and our friends in Greenland can sleep well because they're well secured.
Oh, we really appreciate you sharing that with us. And thank you very much indeed for your time, sir. Lieutenant General Russel L. Honoré. Thank you, sir.